So my guest now is Andy Smallman. Andy is busy connecting people to their true nature, teaching us to be ourselves. This is what a 10-year-old student had to say. I'm very interested in how you're dealing with the young people and teaching them how to like themselves and be themselves.
That is one of the shortest, but one of the best introductions I think I've ever had, because it cuts right to the chase. Thanks, Les.
No problem.
That. Yeah, my name's Andy. And what I really found that I've been doing all my life, really, and really trying to make a career out of it, is helping people know they're okay being who they are. That if we really can return to what is our internal core selves, that we are reasonable, caring people. And a lot of things have happened to us at different times in our lives. And I think one of the things that happens a lot to kids is called school. And I think school makes them feel like they have to move away from who they are. And not all schools. I don't want to sound like some anti-school person, because I'm not. I founded a school and ran a school for 24 years. I just really want people to know that if they can really access their inner wisdom, which I believe that everyone has. Now, younger people have it, but they don't know as much don't have as much life experience, so they may not know exactly how to use some of that, and they can use some other people to help them. That's what I do. I call it really, I like to be more of a mentor or a support person, but
okay.
I just want people...
I wanted to just relate that a little bit to the Road to Human Kindness. Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness, is about getting people to be able to live and work their genius.
Yeah, there you go. That's another way.
And so it sounds kind of similar to what you're talking about with young people. How do you get them to the point where they understand, they have the wisdom to understand what it is that's important to them, that is what they would, now how do you find out what they would like to do? That's what really this is all about.
Yeah, you're right.
We each have our own mindsets and our own way of dealing with things that make us feel good. And so how do you draw that out of a youngster, or how do you prep them to go into the world to be happy about in other words, enjoy what they're doing, so they be happy at what they do?
Yeah. So here's part of my whole thesis around this is I first want people to be thinking about babies and toddlers, and we really don't have to help them know what they want. So we come prepackaged or whatever. Our default system is moving and towards what we want and working on trying to learn stuff. But we don't have a lot of experience. We have no experience when we're first born, and we're not terribly well coordinated. And so we don't have a lot of, we got to grow our brains and start developing as well. So in that process of both becoming enculturated and growing, we lose touch of some of those things. But the one way I've put this to people is, if you ask a 2-year-old what they want to do, and if you can really have a decent conversation with a 2-year-old, they'll give you a dozen things that they want to do.
Yeah, there's no question. And they also cry if they don't get them.
Yeah, well, there's also that.
Right.
But the other thing about that is a lot of those things don't sound like they're useful to people around them. So they think they're frivolous. But for a 2-year-old, they're not. Investigating like lint on the carpet, for instance, might be the most scientifically fascinating thing for a 2-year-old at their development level. Okay. And so they're busy doing it. But we might come in and start telling them that's not worth your time. Here's something more important. And that's basically what most schools do to kids, is to say, hey, put aside your interests. Now we can't trust you to make good decisions for yourself, so we're going to do it for you. So now you got to do what this grown-up tells you to do for this amount of time. And then when the grown-up tells you to stop, because now you got to move on to the next thing, you have to stop. And it causes, I think, young people to grow up learning to not trust themselves, to compartmentalize the things that they're doing, to just when they're getting interested, they might have to put it away. It's like, in many ways, it's one of the worst things we could do to humans if we want them to be self-sufficient, if we want them to really explore their interests, if we want them to know who they are.
It's actually the reverse of life. If you think, when you think about it, you should be given the opportunity to figure out who you are. And then at some point in the future, you go through a discipline, and then you find out more about where you want to go to exercise your genius.
Exactly.
We're doing it in reverse. We're controlling everything, and then we're allowing them to become whatever they want to become when they leave school. And they end up becoming things that we don't want them to become. And
that they, in many cases, don't want to be, but they think they're supposed to be. And that's a real key thing as well, is they end up doing the supposed tos instead of the wants. And we end up with a world with a lot of people unhappy because they're that, and they don't even know what they want anymore. Now, for a lot of people, we also understand that we have some expertise that we can pass on to young people. And there's nothing wrong with that we offer them our expertise. But I stress it's an offer instead of an insistence. And so
requirement.
Exactly. So when I work with young people, and I've been doing it, for over 30 years, what I really want to do is be their partner, and to say, I've got some life experience, and I have a profound respect for who you are right now. At what age
are you doing that?
Well, it depends. So I've worked with little bitty kids, in my career, but right now, the ages that I predominantly work with are between 7 and 14. And I also mentor parents to try to, help them kind of approach their kids maybe a little bit differently. So
how do you do that mentoring? In other words, what is the arrangement that you make in order to be able to do that?
With parents, are you asking that specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the other thing, pandemic wise, it's all basically happening online, using things like Zoom.
But just like we're doing it now, it's
exactly right.
Everybody's on the little screen at this point.
Exactly right. I'm old enough to refer to it as the Brady Bunch, but a lot of people. I think others have said that as well. But I feel like I'm, in the credits of the Brady Bunch. A lot of my day. So how I do that with parents is that I really want them to know that they love their kids, not that they need a reminder, but sometimes they do, and that they're doing the best they know how to do in a given moment based on their own experience as well. And so to try to help them tap into what are you really trying to accomplish here? And then how can I help you accomplish that? And how can I help you see that your kid might be more reasonable than you've been thought than you think, or that you may have thought, for a lot of different reasons.
How much freedom of thought do you give the kids? I mean,
so that's a really, that it really depends on what we're talking about here. I want to give everybody, I don't care how old they are, I want to give everybody freedom of thought. Not that I have it to give. It's really, what do I not take away as a person of, I am in an influential position. I have authority. I have a certain amount of privilege and power that I can, that I have to be aware of, because kids will respond to me basically because I'm a man. They'll respond to me in ways because I'm an adult. And so I have to be conscious of those positions of power that I have. So, but really what I want to do is help empower them. But it's a delicate balancing act sometimes, because a lot of times kids have been conditioned to have to please the adult. So they're busy, and especially the older the kid, the more that they have learned, because we've taught them that the way you get through a moment is to do what the adult wants, please the adult. So I try to get away from that. I try to help them understand. I mean, if they're really serious about wanting to please me, it might be the opposite of what they think it is.
I mean, isn't there a certain amount? There's a certain amount of give and take in this on both sides. What is your background, Andy?
So you mean educationally, or right? Yeah. So I'm a certified teacher. I have been since 1990. I'm certified in the state of Washington as an educator. So a certified teacher for coming up on 32 years. My endorsements are all predominantly special education. So what
made you decide to do something like? What made you decide to go into this kind of?
So how long is your podcast? What I tell people is I got turned off to education because of my own experience as a high school student, especially in the late 70s and early 80s. I graduated from high school in 1981, really decent student by all external measures, but really internally conflicted. I didn't know who I was or what I wanted to do. And rather than just go off to college, which is what most people do, that had my educational scores or whatever, with that, my school counselor said, hey, you can go to any college basically you want with these scores. And I said, I just learned how to play a game. I don't feel like I really know who I am. I ended up for 4 years between 18 and 22, what I call my first undergraduate degree was all me just pursuing things of interest. I was in Alaska for a year as a disc jockey. I was a horse race handicapper for the Daily Racing Forum. I became a big brother in the Big Brother program, and that's where I really realized, oh, I get it. I'm supposed to work with kids. Oh, thank you. And at that point, I started college at 22 and
find your genius. You
exactly.
found what you wanted to pursue, I guess.
Exactly. And so that's kind of my story. And then my purpose from there was to not do to kids what I felt was done to me. And so how would that look? And ultimately, in the early 90s, I put forth an idea for an educational model that drew enough interest that we started a school, and I ran that for 24 years. It's called the Puget Sound Community School. It's middle and high school, and no academic requirements. I mean, that's one aspect of it. No grades, age mixing. The whole
very interesting. So, we are supporting an idea. Well, I won't use the C word, the conscription idea. We think that young people can benefit by serving the country for 2 years when they reach their point where they would be going to college. What do you think of something like that?
Yeah, so on the surface, so my first reaction to that, I think it's a heck of a lot better than a lot of other things that we do. I would prefer that everyone at 18 or so would have some sort of service component to it. I am hesitant to fully endorse something that feels like it's a requirement of people, because a lot of people, because of everything that's been done to them up to that point, push back against anything that is made mandatory. And then they end up never wanting to do it again. That after it's been made mandatory, they think, oh, they had to make me do it. It must not be very good. So in the school that I started, we had service, a service component, but it wasn't required. But what I said to the students is, this is what the school's doing today. The staff will be doing this. And if you're not interested, that's okay. You're going to have to come up with something else. And in some cases, that might mean that we didn't have a place for them to go on that day. I wanted to show them the value of it without making them feel like they had to do it. And now some could argue that that sounds kind of coercive in some ways, that we didn't give them any other options. That evolved over time, and there's lots of stories that we don't have time for right now. But the other thing that I want to help people recognize, that what I really believe in is that we have as adults, I think we have two jobs to do with our kids. We have to help them know who they are, and we have to help them understand they're part of something bigger than themselves. And if we can do those two things, which sometimes for kids, because of their developmental level, seem like contradictory things, but they're not. I refer to it as it's two sides of a Mobius strip, is what we're really talking about. But if we can help them understand who they are, they will want to contribute to things bigger than themselves.
Why don't they know who they are?
For all the reasons that I've already, kind of said.
Because their parents have made them into their whatever they want them to be. And
the schools and our culture and the television programs and, everything basically says this is what you're supposed to want as you grow up in this culture. And if you feel that you're outside of that, or if it doesn't engage or interest you, you either feel there's something wrong with you, or that you feel like, well, I guess I just have to do it. And
how do you do that? How do you do that in a short period of time with a student? How do you make them become aware of who they are?
So again, it's a matter of leading them back to themselves. The idea that I have of this, it's like being a human whisperer. If you remember that movie, or
sure. The horse whisperer,
or that kind of thing. But it's really that as soon as I say anything that implies that I'm doing something, it starts to get away from what I'm doing. It's in a way, it's I guess maybe it's a little Taoistic or something. Abraham Maslow wrote an essay towards the end of his life called "What It Means to Be a Taoistic Teacher," and it's like one of the great inspirations of my life. And he basically said, you set things up. It's like a gardener. You plant your flowers or whatever it is you want to grow, and you basically get out of their way. But you do need to not try to make your rose into a tulip or into a carrot or whatever it is we seem to be doing all the time. And you do need to keep the soil fertile and do some things like that. So my job really is to create an environment in which the natural inclinations of human beings arise. And it's what good parents do for their babies and toddlers. You got to baby-proof things and toddler-proof things, but you really just are trying to keep people safe and not start telling them that they're doing something wrong.
Well, there's a lot of lessons that need to be learned that are valuable lessons, but the issue is how much of that is hampering the individual's creativity and what can they do to accelerate their happiness in what they're doing.
Well, so so when I hear that, and some of the criticisms of the work that I've done over the years is people say you're creating a bunch of indulgent young people. And I say, well, you're missing half of my message, because I really want to And you first, again, because of human development, you first have to help young people understand who they are. And that means helping them do things that they're interested in. And some of those things may seem frivolous or silly or whatever, but they're not to the individual doing them. But the second part of my message, which comes in it follows so quickly that it almost, you might not see it, but it's done gently, is to help them recognize they have a responsibility to contribute to things bigger than themselves. So
I love that. That's one of the things we're trying to do with Main Street Philanthropy, teaching young people philanthropy and how to operate nonprofit organizations. My guest is Andy Smallman, and Andy is I'm
a human being on the planet trying to do good. How's that?
Okay. A human on the planet trying to be good and make everything go to human kindness and get the kindness in people because they're happy doing what they want to do. I appreciate your time, Andy. And I think your work is really great. I hope that you can get a lot of people to follow the Taoist road that you're laying out. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Andy.
My pleasure, Les. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you.